During E3 2018, there was a video game reveal that really surprised me and caught my attention. This game was from a franchise that I historically hadn't been interested in, and its core audience was very negative about this particular entry in the series. I guess I should also mention the development studio behind this game has a reputation for releasing games in an unfinished state with game-breaking bugs and glitches. Nevertheless, I allowed myself to get excited about the potential for this game to succeed, because it seemed like an extremely interesting gameplay experience, and after all, despite the bugs their previous games had, its fan base was still extremely positive about most of their previous titles. A couple of months later, I experienced this game for myself, and while there were definitely some gameplay mechanics that clicked with me, particularly exploring the world with friends, there was no denying the game was broken in more ways than one. Fallout 76 was an extremely disappointing experience for me. But being the eternal optimist that I am, I shifted my attention to Anthem. The studio and publisher working on this new title have a terrible track record not only in their games, but also in their business practices. However, the promises made and gameplay experience seemed too good to be ignored. So I took another plunge. I worked on some content for the game, and then the VIP demo hit. And damn did it hit hard. It revealed a really fun gameplay experience, which was severely hindered by a ton of surrounding problems. Fast forward a couple of weeks and we have the final product on our hands, with some slight improvements, but it is still made clear that this title was rushed out the door. However, I'm not as disappointed as I was with Fallout 76. Because despite its shortcomings, the core gameplay feels really good. The gear abilities and combo system really give the player a sense of power, and the flying feels great. So great, in fact, it's hard to imagine that at one point in time, flying wasn't a core element of gameplay. At this stage, I was just hopeful that the experience could be improved given enough time. There was no denying that the potential for a great game was there, but it still needed a lot of work to improve on everything around that core gameplay. But then the patches started coming in. And right in the first big patch, I was taken aback, because it seemed to me like they were just going after each bug with a shotgun, fixing some things but leaving a big mess behind them in the process. This is when I first noticed there was a distinct lack of direction in the development team. Improvements were being made, but they didn't have a clear objective. It was full-on panic mode damage control with every consecutive patch, several times breaking multiple things in order to fix something simple. Their approach was so erratic, in fact, that it became obvious a lot of these fixes were just being pushed onto live servers without even being tested in a QA environment. At this point, we don't even know if they have a QA team at all. More recently, Jason Shreir released a report based on the interviews of 19 different people that worked at BioWare during Anthem's development, and the community's suspicions were confirmed. The game went through development hell and ended up having to be released with a lot of known problems because of deadlines. However, from what I've gathered thus far, the problems in the game itself aren't even the worst ones, because you can fix some of those after launch, even though that shouldn't be the expectation, and it shows a terrible lack of respect for your player base, which has been a common theme throughout the gaming industry. But no, I'm talking about two different issues, which might not even have a solution. Now, issue number one is the project's leadership, which is shown to basically have been terrible for the first 5 years Anthem had been in development, revealing extreme incompetence in leading what turns out to be an extremely talented group of developers. And some of you will dispute the talent of the team behind Anthem, but what you need to remember is having talented individuals under your command doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to properly lead them and put their skills to use. But before we elaborate on just how talented this team of developers is, we need to look at issue number 2, Frostbite. So this is an engine developed by DICE to support their Battlefield games. However, EA has taken a liking to Frostbite's pretty graphics, so they basically forced this engine down everyone's throats, regardless of how good it can actually support these types of games. And can I just add that it's extremely appropriate for this engine to be named after an injury that occurs when you are exposed to extreme cold? It's almost as if EA themselves are ice cold and every studio they purchase is ultimately exposed to deadly negative temperatures and end up dying of frostbite. Maybe their next engine can be called hypothermia. Anyway, back on topic, BioWare has always struggled with Frostbite because it doesn't have the proper tools to make an RPG, and they have to build everything from the ground up. They did this process for both Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, Inquisition by some miracle turned out okay. However, Andromeda suffered greatly from the limitations imposed by the Frostbite engine. In fact, the development of Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem is incredibly similar. They come up with a concept that they want to execute on, and then they try to execute that concept in Frostbite. They then proceed to fail to execute said concept for years on end, and reboot the development cycle in the last 2 years of development, crunch non-stop, putting in effort and basically doing the best they can with the tools at their disposal, and out comes a game. And as you can imagine, this not only generates incredible stress for their teams, but the games themselves will never release in a great state. Truth be told, it's amazing they even release at all. But you see, this is exactly why I say that the BioWare developers are extremely talented. With all the leadership flaws and limitations imposed on them by their parent company, they were still able to build the core experience of Anthem in less than 2 years. Think about that for a minute. Less than 2 years of proper development time with a proper vision of the product you are actually building, while still fighting the limitations of a game engine that quite simply refuses to play nice, and at the same time, your parent company poaches talent from your team to work on their flagship product, FIFA. It's impressive anyone in that team still has their sanity. Now imagine you go through all of this, and then the internet just takes a dump on everything you've worked on. All the crunch time, all the effort, everything. It's friggin' savage. Now look, I'm not here to defend Anthem, but several of you guys have been asking where is my Anthem content. And essentially, until they significantly improve the experience surrounding the core gameplay, there just isn't that much to do. I've played the 2 javelins that I like up until endgame, I've posted my endgame builds, and now I'm just waiting for whatever is coming next. But I can't help the feeling of disappointment, because with every patch they put out, every time they fix a bug, they create 2 new problems, and it's been like this with every single patch. After the negative release reaction to the game, you might even begin to wonder how much of a team does BioWare even have that is dedicated to Anthem at this point, and how much of them are currently banging their heads against their keyboards, cursing the very existence of the Frostbite engine. Will they ever overcome the limitations of Frostbite? Will they have the courage to move away from the Fort Tarsis experience? Can they actually deliver on proper fun events? What are we going to see when the cataclysm actually hits? I just don't know, but it's hard not to lose hope. At this point, I don't regret what I've played of Anthem, I just regret that there isn't more, and I quite simply don't know if there ever will be.